Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the why, what, and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles displayed on the screen from the daily edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 16th November 2018, and the time stamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let us start our discussion for the day. This article talks about the judicial activism and the judicial overreach. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination. And you should know that previously, two questions have been asked in the mains examination under the paper 2 related to the judicial activism. For example, this question was directly asked related to judicial activism in the year 2014. Further, there was a question in the 2013 which was also related to the judicial activism of the Supreme Court. In this regard, let us understand some of the points that have been highlighted by the author in this article. Now, regarding the judicial activism, you should note that judicial activism is generally known as the proactive role played by the judiciary in protecting the rights of the citizens and promotion of justice in the society. So it is the proactive role played by the judiciary in protecting the rights of the citizen and in promotion of justice in the society at large. And you should note that the scope of judicial activism has been widened by the introduction of public interest litigation. Further, the scope of judicial activism has been widened by the various articles of the Indian Constitution which provide for judicial review. And these articles are the Article 13, the Article 32 which deals with the writ jurisdiction of Supreme Court, and also by the Article 226 which deals with the writ jurisdiction of the High Courts. In this regard, the author has highlighted that the Supreme Court has been very active in making laws in recent time. However, the author questions the role of Supreme Court in legislating on various issues which fall under the sphere of Parliament. Further, the author has highlighted various cases under which the courts themselves have recognized that the legislation should be in the sphere of Parliament only, and the Supreme Court and the courts should not enter that arena. Further, the author has highlighted recent cases of judicial legislation where the Supreme Court has played an active role in creating laws. So let us try to look at the judgments of the Supreme Court in this regard, which has been highlighted by the author. In this regard, the author has highlighted that the court itself has observed in the past judgments that separation of power should be maintained. Further, making of laws is the function of legislature and not of courts. So in one of the judgments, the court observed that the constitution does not envisage one organ of the state to assume functions which essentially belong to the other organ, and it had upheld the principle of separation of powers. And in this regard, the court observed that one organ should not encroach into the domain of another organ, because it will upset the delicate balance in the constitution. Further, the court in past judgments have highlighted that making of laws is the function of legislature. In this regard, in a previous case, the court had highlighted that the power to legislate has not been conferred on the courts. In another judgment, the court had observed that under our constitutional scheme, Parliament and legislative assemblies exercise sovereign power to enact laws, which means that no body other than the Parliament and legislative assemblies can legislate or enact laws. Further, the author has highlighted recent examples of judicial legislations or the cases in which the Supreme Courts have enacted new laws. For example, in the first instance, the Supreme Court fixed timings for bursting of Diwali crackers, and it prohibited the use of non-green fireworks. However, the author argues that there are no laws to that effect which have been created by Parliament or the legislative assemblies, and these laws have been created by the Supreme Court on its own. Secondly, in another case, the court had directed that no BS4 or the Bharat Stage 4 vehicles should be sold after March 30, 2020, and only BS6 or Bharat Stage 6 vehicles can be sold after that date. In this regard, the Supreme Court had annulled the statutory rule of Central Motor Vehicle Rules 1989. Highlighting another example, the author says that under the section 498A of the Indian Penal Code, which deals with the dowry cases, the court observed that this section of the Indian Penal Code was being misused, and the Supreme Court amended this section by requiring complaints under the provision to be sent to a family welfare committee, and the author argues that there is no such requirement in the section 498A enacted by the Parliament. And another example that has been highlighted by the author is that the National Green Tribunal ordered that no 15-year-old petrol-driven or 10-year-old diesel-driven vehicle can move in Delhi. However, the author highlights that neither the National Green Tribunal nor the Supreme Court are legislative bodies, and such decisions should have been taken by the Parliament or the legislative assemblies of the state. So these are some of the examples which have been highlighted by the author and can be used in answering the questions. So these are important for us from exam point of view. And concluding, the author says that judicial legislation not only goes against the separation of power doctrine, but it can lead to uncertainty in the law and chaos, as every judge will start drafting his own laws according to his own whims and fancies. So all these points highlighted by the author can be used in answering these questions which were asked in the previous year's mains examinations. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 8 is related to the international relations under the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination. Under this article, the author has highlighted that India must remain engaged with the multiple processes underway on the Afghan reconciliation. Now, you should know that recently Russia hosted a regional conference which was named as the Moscow format. And this Moscow format was on consultation regarding the Afghanistan. Now, according to author, the Moscow format had presence of all stakeholders like India, Pakistan, United States, China, Iran, Taliban and Afghan authorities, etc. Therefore, the author argues that the Moscow format has the ability to attain the reconciliation process between the Taliban and the Afghan authorities. So in this regard, let us understand some of the concerns that have been raised by the author. Further, let us understand what is the need for involving Taliban in the Afghanistan's peace process. And finally, let us look at the recommendations that author provides to India in this regard. Now let us look at the concerns that have been raised by the author regarding the Moscow format. In this regard, the author says that the Taliban considers the Afghanistan government as illegitimate and therefore it had opposed the Moscow format. Further, regarding the Afghanistan government's participation in the Moscow format, the author says that the Afghan government did not send its representatives. However, the Afghanistan government was represented by the High Peace Council, which is supported by the Afghanistan government but is not a part of the Afghanistan government. So in short, the Afghanistan government is not directly participating in the Moscow format. Thirdly, the author says that India had sent 2 former diplomats as being part of the non-official process. And this is because India did not want to share the same stage with that of Taliban. Further, the author says that the United States was represented by the Moscow embassy officials. And due to this, they had an observer status at this meeting. And finally, the Moscow format is being led by Russia, and it has been criticized for not adhering to the principle of Afghan-led and Afghan-owned process. So in short, these are the concerns that have been highlighted by the author regarding the efficacy of the Moscow format. However, on the other hand, the author has highlighted about the positives of the Moscow format and also regarding the need of involving Taliban in such a process. Now, regarding the involvement of Taliban in the Afghanistan's peace process, the author argues that Taliban has now been controlling major portions of Afghanistan, and therefore it has been considered as being legitimate inclusion in the Afghan-led and Afghan-owned principle. So simply as Taliban is controlling major territories in Afghanistan, the involvement of Taliban was required for an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned process. Secondly, the author argues that the Afghanistan government under Ashraf Ghani has also invited Taliban for direct talks. Further, the United States has also shown its inclination in engaging in talks with Taliban. Now, due to such involvements of the Afghan government and the US government, the legitimacy of Taliban is increasing or improving. Further, regarding the improving legitimacy of Taliban, the author argues that the United States-led forces had on times engaged with Taliban on local level during the post-war period in Afghanistan. Further, Pakistan continues to maintain support to Afghan Taliban. Further, the author argues that an initiative involving United States, China, Pakistan and Afghanistan was launched in January 2016 against the Taliban. However, it failed in controlling the growth of Taliban. That is why Taliban has now become a force to reckon with. Further, the author argues that Taliban is required by the Western countries to combat the rise of Islamic State in Afghanistan. Finally, the author argues that the conflict with the Taliban has been consuming resources of the United States and the Afghanistan government, which could otherwise be utilized for the reconstruction of Afghanistan. Therefore, the author says that the better alternative is to engage Taliban in the peace talks. So, the author has argued that legitimacy of Taliban has been improving due to following reasons. And further, the involvement of Taliban has now become important to fight the menace of Islamic State in Afghanistan. And finally, the author has provided certain recommendations for India to follow. In this regard, the author has highlighted that India has supported the Moscow format during the recent visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin. and therefore India should continue its commitment to the Moscow format. Further, the author has highlighted that India has always supported an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace process. That is why it should continue to maintain presence in all the international peace processes on Afghanistan. And that is why India's participation in the Moscow format becomes all the more important. And finally, the author has argued that India doesn't have the leverage to play a spoiler in the Afghan peace process. However, India's presence in the Moscow format is a recognition that its economic cooperation programs make it the most widely accepted development partner in the Afghanistan's peace process. Now, if you go through the previous year questions, you will find that in the year 2013, there was a question related to the withdrawal of international security assistance forces from the Afghanistan and its impact on the region's security. So that is why this peace talks and the points that have been discussed in this article become important for us from exam point of view. And similarly, a question can be asked in the near future. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 1 is related to the lack of recruitment in the lower judiciary. In this regard, the Chief Justice of India has pulled the state government regarding the delay in appointments in the subordinate judicial services. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination. Now the article further reads that there are about 5,000 positions lying vacant at the subordinate judiciary level, and this is leading to increasing pendency of cases. Now, according to the Chief Justice of India, there are two primary reasons for such large number of vacancies. The first is the lackadaisical approach on the part of authorities in conducting the appointment process on time, which means that there is lack of enthusiasm and determination on the part of authorities in conducting the appointment procedure in time. Secondly, there is poor infrastructure for judges, which include poor infrastructure for courtrooms and residences for the judges. So in this regard, let us understand some of the statistics related to the increasing number of pendency in Indian judiciary. Further, we will try to understand what are the reasons for the increasing pendency of cases in Indian judiciary. And finally, we will look at the solutions which have been provided by Niti Aayog in its Justice Reform System report. Now let us look at some of the statistics that have been provided by the PRS legislature regarding the pendency of cases. Now according to the PRS legislature, there are about 54,000 cases pending in the Supreme Court, and there are about 43 lakh cases pending in the High Courts. However, the highest number of cases pending are in the subordinate courts or the lower judiciary, and they amount to about 3 crore cases. So in this regard, you should note that 86% of the cases are lying pending in the subordinate courts, which is followed by 13.4% in the high courts. Further, you should note that between the period 2006 to 2018, there has been an 8.6% rise in the pendency across all courts. So these statistics show a very serious picture regarding the pendency of cases in the Indian judicial system. And these points can be used in answering any question related to pendency in the judicial system. Now let us look at some of the reasons for increasing pendency of cases in judiciary. The first is the corruption in the appointment procedure at the lower level. And it has been found that there is huge corruption in appointments, especially at lower level. Further, the appointments are affected by the delay due to the state public service commissions in conducting the exam on a timely basis. And these delays are also due to corruption at times. Another reason for increasing pendency of cases is the frequent transfer of judges at the lower judiciary level. Further, due to the improving socio-economic conditions, common man is becoming aware about his or her own rights. And that is why the people have now gathered courage to approach courts of law for justice. Another reason for increasing pendency is the introduction of new mechanisms like Public Interest Litigation and the Right to Information Act. And due to the introduction of acts like the Right to Information Act, various loopholes or wrongdoings of the government have been brought to light. And as such, the activists have started approaching the courts. Further, due to the judicial activism and the introduction of public interest litigation, the number of cases in the Supreme Court and High Court are also increasing. Further, there is lack of enough judges, and that is leading to increasing pendency of cases. In this case, the ratio of judges to the Indian population is about 10 judges for every 1 million population. However, in 1987, the Law Commission had recommended that there should be 50 judges for 1 million population. Further, the budgetary allocations for improving the judicial administration is meager, and it is about 0.1% to about 0.4% of the whole budgets in various states. Another reason for increasing pendency or the increasing number of cases is because of the increasing litigations by the government. And you should know that the government of India is the largest litigant in the courts, and it is responsible for nearly half the pending cases in the courts. So the government is responsible for 50% of all the pending cases in the judiciary. Further, it has been noticed that there is low judicial quality at lower levels, and this is because of lack of all India judicial services. And last but not the least reason is that there are large number of archaic laws, and these laws have multiple interpretations by various courts, and these are the reasons for prolonged litigation. Now let us look at some of the suggestions that have been provided by Niti Aayog in its 3-year action agenda report. In this regard, the Niti Aayog's Justice Reform System report has highlighted that there is a need to create and introduce separate administrative cadre in the judicial system. In this regard, the report says that it will relieve the judges who are also involved in the administrative capacities. Further, handling administrative responsibilities by the judges reduces the time available for dispensing cases pending in the court, which includes time for hearing cases and writing judgments as well. The second suggestion provided by the Niti Aayog's report is regarding the streamlining of judicial appointments procedure. The report says that steps must be taken to ensure the availability of judicial statistics, and these statistics can be used to determine the requirement and adequacy of judicial manpower as well as infrastructure required to handle the case burden. That is why there is a need to develop a system where the statistics related to the requirement of judicial manpower and infrastructure can be handled easily. In this regard, the report says that the maintenance of such statistics will help in identifying the number of vacancies at each level of judicial system, and these vacancies can be filled in time. Further, the report says that creation of special courts will require judges having certain specialist background, and in this regard, the report says that the appointments must take care of judges' specialization either in the previous tenure or during the academic career. Further, the report suggests that the Parliament must deliberate on the introduction of All India Judicial Services, and it will be a merit-based All India exam and will attract the best legal minds of the country for a respected and coveted post in Indian judiciary. And you should know that All India Judicial Service finds mention in the Indian Constitution under the Article 312. Further, the report says that the burden of cases in the regular courts can be reduced by shifting court workloads through the creation of special courts. In this regard, the report says that large number of cases related to commercial disputes are pending in the courts. Thus, there is a need to create special courts in relation to commercial cases. Further, you should note that Law Commission in its 255th report has suggested to use special courts as it will free the regular courts and can utilize resources to tackle more routine cases. Further, the report says that special courts can also be dedicated to handle cases of traffic challans, and regular courts must be freed from such cases as it will further free them up from their daily chores or daily business. Now, after going through the points highlighted in this article, you should try and answer this question from your mains examination point of view. And few of the points mentioned in this article can also be used in answering this question. With this, let us move on to the next article. This article on page number 14 is related to a policy of Government of India to provide broadband to the Gram Panchayats. And the name of this policy is BharatNet. So this will form an important part under the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic Economic and Social Development. Now, another important thing to understand under this article is the technology which is being used by the BharatNet project. And these technologies become important because in the year 2018, a question was asked related to the technology which is being used by the Aadhaar platform. So let us try to understand the key aspects of the BharatNet project and the technology which the BharatNet project uses. Now let us look at few important points of the BharatNet project from our preliminary examination point of view. So under this, the first one is the objective or the target of the BharatNet project. So it is about providing high-speed broadband to all Gram Panchayats by the year 2019. So this is the target and it becomes important for us from exam point of view. Secondly, it is the revamped version of National Optical Fiber Network which was launched in the October 2011. So it is another key aspect of the BharatNet project that it is the revamped version of National Optical Fiber Network or the NOFN. Now the third important aspect of the BharatNet project is the way it is being funded. So it is being funded by the Universal Service Obligation Fund or the USOF. Now let us understand how is this fund being raised. So the Universal Service Obligation Fund, or the USOF, is being raised by imposition of a levy on the percentage of revenue which is being earned by the operators under various licenses. Now, another important aspect for us from preliminary examination point is the implementing body of the BharatNet project. So, in this line, the Bharat Broadband Network Limited, or the BBNL, is the implementing body of BharatNet project. So, these are few important points for us from preliminary examination point of view and should be kept in mind. Now, regarding the technology which is being used in the BharatNet project, it is the Gigabit Passive Optical Network. So, it is GPON technology which is being used under the BharatNet project. Now, what is unique about this GPON network? For this, you should know that in simple optical fiber networks, the connection is between one point to another point. However, regarding this GPON, the important fact to note is that it provides point to multi-point connectivity, which can be seen through a simple diagram like this. That is, it provides one point to multi-point connectivity. So, the important point to note about the Gigabit Passive Optical Network is that it provides a point to multi-point connection. And the third important point related to GPON is that it uses passive or unpowered optical splitters. Now, one important point to use is that the use of optical splitters enables the GPON technology to provide point to multi-point connections. And this is unpowered and does not use any energy. So, by the use of optical splitters, the energy which is being consumed under the GPON is reduced considerably. So, it is a low cost equipment. Now, if you look at this question which was asked in the year 2018, the question reads, the identity platform Aadhaar provides open application programming interface, or the APIs. So in this regard, the question asks, what does it imply? So the first statement reads, it can be integrated into any electronic device. This is the correct statement. The second line reads, online authentication using iris is possible. And you should know that online authentication is possible using iris and the fingerprints. So this is also correct. Hence, the correct answer in this case is C, that is both 1 and 2. Now, after going through this article, you should try and answer this question from your preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 18 is in news because a super Earth has been found orbiting Sun's nearest single star. So, this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic Current Events of International Importance. And if you notice the previous year questions, you can find that in the year 2015, a question was asked related to the term Goldilocks zone, which was sometimes in news. So such information becomes important for us from exam point of view. So let us try to understand what is meant by the term super Earth. Also, we will try to understand some of the key points related to this new finding. Now we know that this is in news because the astronomers have discovered a frozen planet which has mass over 3 times that of Earth, and it is orbiting the closest solitary star to the Sun. Now the name of this planet is Barnard Star B. Now the name of the planet is Barnard Star B. However, the star around which this planet revolves is known as the Barnard Star. And regarding the Barnard Star, you should know that it is the second closest star to our Sun. And the star which is closest to our Sun is the Alpha Centauri triple system. So here you should note that Barnard Star is the closest solitary star to the Sun. However, the Alpha Centauri system is a system composed of 3 stars. Now, however, the closest star to the Sun is the Alpha Centauri triple system, which consists of 3 stars. And the closest solitary star to the Sun is the Barnard Star. Now, regarding Barnard Star, you should know that it is a low mass star, which is also called as red dwarf. And regarding red dwarfs, you should know that they have mass lesser than the Sun of our solar system, and they have less brightness and temperature. Further, Barnard Star B is the second closest known exoplanet to our Sun. And finally, you should know that the closest planet to the Sun is the Proxima B, and it revolves around the red dwarf Proxima. Now, regarding the super Earth, you should note that it is an extrasolar planet, which means that it is a planet outside our solar system. Secondly, it has a mass higher than that of Earth. However, it has mass lesser than that of Uranus and the Neptune. So the mass of super Earths lie between the mass of Earth and that of Uranus and Neptune. Secondly, the term super Earth refers only to the mass of the planet, and it does not have any relation with the temperature of the planet or the habitability of that planet. So this term refers only to the mass of the planet. So these are 2 important facts related to super Earth which should be known from our exam point of view. And if you look at the question that was asked in 2015, the question reads, the term Goldilocks zone is often seen in the news in the context of. So it was in news in the context of search for Earth-like planets in outer space. So that is why the term super Earth also becomes important for us from exam point of view. Now, after going through this article, you should try and answer this question from a preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now let us move on to the question for the day.